Springfield's Talk 1041. Hey, everybody. Good Tuesday morning. Start off with something real positive. Emily Johnson, House Theory Realty. Emily was amazing to work with as a first-time home buyer trying to navigate a complex and fast-paced market. Emily did a wonderful job in helping us find the perfect home and stay positive even in a very competitive seller's market. She was professional, knowledgeable, did not pressure us to look at houses that wouldn't work for us or go over our budget. We absolutely plan on working with her again if ever we need a realtor. Cannot recommend her enough for all of your home buying and selling needs. Emily Johnson, House Theory Realty. Recommend that even if it's not you, but I've seen this, you've seen this, people will post on social media, looking to sell our home or looking to buy a home, who's a good realtor? And then they go from not knowing any names to having 80 different names thrown at them that mean nothing to them, but you can offer them something that is meaningful, and that's Emily Johnson, House Theory Realty. Coming up, we will discuss some of the new poll numbers, which once again show tremendous news for the Trump campaign and is a devastating blow to the media's attempt to try and usher Biden into a second term, and increasingly the the realization that people get what's going on. They fully understand the political persecution of Donald Trump. And what the media is finding very frustrating is that people don't care. They're trying to rationalize this. Well, the thing is, people aren't really watching what's going on. And there may be some truth to that. But it isn't because they're unaware of it. It's because they know what it is. It's political persecution. And they don't even know, because this still hasn't been presented exactly what the actual crime that they're trying to imprison him for the rest of his life, exactly what it is. They keep hearing, well, there's this expired misdemeanor, but then there's this other secret crime that at some point we're going to unveil, and that's the reason that the initial expired crime can become something that we put him in prison for the rest of his life. It's this convoluted labyrinth that one has to navigate through, ever lost, never finding the entrance or exit. And even yesterday, the commentators still, even on MSNBC and CNN, discussing, now we still don't exactly know what this crime is that's part. I mean, I think Cohen's the last witness. At what point is this going to be presented? And we also, once upon a time, were a country in which if you're accused of something by the government, you're told ahead of time, here's what you're being charged with, so you can prepare your defense. That is apparently out the window. This is what Kafka's piece, The Trial, is all about this government entity that charges the main character with some sort of crime, but he can't even figure out what it is. A piece that is the illustration of true authoritarian tyranny, and here it's playing out in real life in the United States of America. We have watched DEI and CRT graduates displaying what it is that they've learned on university campuses for several weeks now. This is the hatred that is created when you teach people that there is a system set in place that either creates or fosters oppressors and oppressed. And that's how it's all one constant battle. And you must fight in that battle, because if you do not fight in that battle, then silence is violence, and you're on the side of evil and all that sort of stuff. And so you create a lot of people that really, really hate. You create here in the United States, and this has been created, what we have watched play out for generations in the Middle East, in which they have done the same thing that is done with DEI and CRT here. They just got a head start on it some time ago, and there are oppressors and oppressed, and they start at a very young age, Jews, of course, being the oppressors. and the West falls in there as well. But the primary focus being Jews, and this is how you end up with people who are willing to strap bombs to themselves and blow themselves up to take out as many Jews as possible, because it is ingrained at a very young age. And with CRT and DEI being part of the school systems that we see, and portray businesses as well. I mean, these corporations, they brag about it. We should not be surprised this is what we see play out. There is a graduate of DEI and CRT that was arrested in New Jersey. This is a black Marine by the name of Joshua Cobb, 23 years old, and he had planned on killing as many white people as possible. And when you read what is in the indictment and his writings and his rationale for doing it, it is a carbon copy DEI CRT. White people are the oppressors, going to get as many of them as I possibly can. You couldn't ask for a better graduate of the CRT DEI program, which is also why you're probably not going to hear a lot about this case. Certainly not to the degree that you would if it was some Trump-supporting white guy who had a plan to shoot up as many, whatever possible in order to make America great again. Of course, this would be something that would require an address from the Oval Office and the news leading every news broadcast with a story about it. But it's a little inconvenient when it shows that it's their ideology that, of course, is creating these hate mongers that want to kill as many people as possible. The Pyramid Roofing Company talk and text line is 447 KSGF. You don't even have to remember the number if you have the KSGF app, because it's just a tap of a button inside there. Traffic coming up. Also, a look at the latest weather right now. The news. And that first alert forecast sponsored by Wolfpack Cleaners, your residential and commercial cleaning professionals. From Color 10 Fox 49, meteorologist Tom Schmidt. Scattered showers, thunderstorms, mainly afternoon today. Otherwise, mostly cloudy, a high near 70. Tonight, isolated showers and storms before 8. Tomorrow, partly sunny, 78. And Thursday, a 70% chance of showers and storms, and mostly cloudy with a high near 77. I think yesterday, more than any other day, the cloud, at any given moment, you could look in a direction and see 1/5 of the sky that was dark and ominous, and then the rest just beautiful clouds. And it was just like that all day long. Then it would go away, and then you're like, oh, well, look over there. It's over there. I don't know if back up north where you are.
No, so you could see like a good portion. You could see where the rain was actually falling in the distance. And then the rest of it was just like a light gray. And then it would just kind of like swirl around in different areas. Ugh, it rained so hard at my house.
Oh, see, we got just a bit. But I spent the better part of the day with my mother-in-law traipsing around running some errands. And I, like, oh, it looks like it's going to rain. And I got to the point I was like, well, it's somewhere. Yes, I think it is right now. And then it would just go, we'd go inside wherever it was that we were, and then we'd come back outside, and that would be good. But then you looked in the other direction, and there was just this little, like these very ominous clouds, and it was so isolated like that throughout the day. It doesn't surprise me to hear a story that, a tornado popped up on a golf course down in Taney County.
Did you see the video of it?
No, I did not.
It was a pretty good size.
Was it? Sounds like a real...
The audio on it was pretty funny. The guys were like, is that a tornado? We should probably get out of here. I'll show it to you.
It's like a real extreme version of putt-putt golf. They have they got a windmill and you got the crocodile and a tornado. When I was working up in Wisconsin, Wisconsin at the time had more golf courses per capita than any other state. Yeah, people up there love golf. And I think part of the reason is because the summers are very, very, very nice up there. And because the amount of time to actually go out and enjoy the weather is limited compared to a lot of other parts of the country, people really like to get out and do things outside up there because they're just, oh, hey, the weather's nice. And I remember there was a story. There was a small single engine plane crash that it crashed on the green in a golf course, one of the many golf courses in the Milwaukee area. And the pilot was fine, but the plane was pretty mangled. And so the pilot walked away and then called whomever to, I guess, I don't know who comes and gets a plane crash like that. But people played around it because they were not going to give up their golf game. And they literally played around. That was half the news stories, that people were just playing around this plane that crashed on the green. No, I don't even know what hole it was. Coming up, New Jersey Marine arrested for allegedly making threats to kill white people and began planning a mass shooting. The perfect graduate of CRT DEI. What poll is that? I just find some of this stuff hilarious. 28% of blacks, I guess at this time in the election season, said they supported Trump. It's 23% now. I just love watching that stuff. It's absurdly hilarious. We'll get to some additional poll numbers coming up. First, Sarah Myers.
Thank you. The Pyramid Roofing Company. We've had lots of rain, lots of wind, lots of hail, and there's a good chance that some of you that have roof damage have probably run into door knockers. Either they are actually at your door, knocking on your door, or leaving you flyers. And there's a good chance if you have had that, they have probably come out, said that they were going to do a roof inspection for you, and then they want you to sign a contingency agreement. Well, don't sign that, because those are unnecessary with a company that has your best interest in mind. That's why I want to tell you about Josh and his team over at the Pyramid Roofing Company. They are not going to take advantage of you because a storm has rolled through the area. Whenever you call the Pyramid Roofing Company, they will come out, they'll do a free, thorough roof inspection. They're going to check everything from wind damage, hail damage, they're going to check your vents, your gutters, or they're even going to get into your attic and check your decking as well. And then they're going to work through that roofing process with you. They're not going to try to upsell you. They're not going to use scare tactics. If you are in a situation where you just need a simple roof repair, they're going to let you know. So if it is time for that free roof inspection, go ahead and give the Pyramid Roofing Company a call today. You can find all of the contact information for the Pyramid Roofing Company under the Sarah's Endorsements tab at ksgf.com.
Well, it's graduation season, and if ever there were a class of graduating critical race theory, diversity, equity, inclusion folks, this individual would certainly vie for head of the class, a Marine arrested in New Jersey after he allegedly threatened to kill white people in various social media posts and apparently began planning a mass shooting, according to federal prosecutors. Joshua Cobb, 23, of Trenton, was brought into custody Friday and was charged with transmitting a threat in interstate and foreign commerce after he allegedly posted statements online bragging about his interest in becoming a serial killer and threatening to, quote, cause mayhem on the white community. This, according to U.S. Attorney Office for the District of New Jersey, according to court documents filed in the case. Cobb had compiled detailed information on locations he was considering as possible targets for a mass shooting, which included a local gym and an Aldi grocery store in Robbinsville, New Jersey. His phone also allegedly contained notes on how to smuggle firearms into New Jersey, which is really weird because, they have such strict gun control laws. I don't think that you can do that, right? That's how the gun control laws work. They stop bad people from doing stuff like that. U.S. Attorney Philip Sellinger announced the arrest on Monday, saying Cobb joined the U.S. Marine Corps in 2023 and began basic training in June of that year. Now, if it has escaped you, incidentally, since Biden took office, CRT and DEI has been a big push within our military. That's something that they have been indoctrinating young recruits into learning about the oppressors and the oppressed. And so it shouldn't come as any huge surprise that this individual that wanted to go out and mass kill as many white people as possible joined the U.S. Marines in 2023 and began basic training in June of that year. Cobb was stationed in California until his recent discharge, according to statements provided via the Attorney's Office, District of New Jersey. Cobb posted a social media message on December 17, 2022. Saying that he had begun preparing for a major attack. The message included a detailed account of him gathering additional guns and ammunition and planning entry and exit points. Quote, the reason I specifically want to target white people is because as a black male, they will never understand my struggles. Now, where do we hear that sort of verbiage? Where is it that we hear the indoctrination peddled out that white people are inherently bad and racist, and you can never truly understand the struggle of a person of color, whether you think that you do or not? In fact, that just proves you're even more racist. The more you think that you're not racist, the more racist you are. The more that you think you understand people of color, that just shows how elite and racist and white-splaining you are. And it really is shocking to hear someone get out there and talk about, as a black male, white people will never understand me. They can't. They're not capable of it, so I've got to kill as many as possible. I mean, it is almost as if he is reading word for word from the DEI CRT flashcards prior to a big test. He went on to say, same way, I will never understand their struggles, but I don't care. I want to erase them. All of them, really. But in this case, as many as I possibly can. Cobb also debated over a date, saying, quote, I'm going to be sure it's close to an important holiday to their race. I suspect that would be Independence Day, because this is another indoctrination of division with CRT and DEI, of course, that Independence Day is only Independence Day for white people. It's a white people's holiday. I'm not sure. Are there any other white people holiday that CRT and DEI really push out there, claiming that it's not a holiday that applies to people of color? I don't know.
I don't know. I feel like they would probably attack around Christmas.
Possibly, but 4th of July is a go-to.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so easy because, of course, the country's founded on racism, and all those MAGA people like the 4th of July and fireworks and patriotism. These are all potential domestic terrorists. Those are the people, of course, if you listen to this administration, we're supposed to be worried about. Not guys like this. No. Let's not be confused here, of course. It's the people that he was targeting that are the real threats to this country. He would write, as of today, I've officially began planning my attack. It's going to take place in 2023 in the state of New Jersey. I've not chosen an exact date, but I'm going to be sure it's close to an important holiday to their race. I have a location in mind already, which I have frequented for the past year, and I'm certain nobody there is armed to be able to stop me from spraying them to the ground. I've already acquired 2 of the 4 firearms I plan to use for my attack, and I also know my entry and exit points already after the mayhem. I tell you what, this guy is chock full of life lessons here. I mean, you want to talk about somebody that's offering learning moments here? Now, he's screaming the results of diversity, equity, inclusion, and critical race theory. We're also learning that despite New Jersey having some of the most strict gun laws in the country, doesn't stop someone from compiling weapons illegally for the purposes of shooting as many people as possible. But also the fact that New Jersey, specifically looking for locations in New Jersey, are the locations that he's choosing because he knows there are strict gun laws and people will not be armed there. In other words, gun-free zones attract mass killers. But as usual in our culture, particularly amongst the left, when something doesn't work, whenever you have something that is implemented and it actually harms the people you're trying to help, you don't reverse course. You do more of that very thing, which of course would be more gun-free zones. Throughout 2023, Cobb posted additional messages on social media threatening similar action. He also openly discussed the rush you feel while shooting someone in April and May of 2023. He continued his online tirade and explained that he postponed his planned attack to gather more ammunition, 100% someday, just not yet, though, he would write. I want to continue training and buying more ammunition. This according to the district attorney's office. To be honest, I hope I do progress into a serial killer because I hate my life, man. But one day, everyone will suffer, I promise. I will make everyone feel my pain, my deep, sincere, raw, and sharp pain, he wrote in another message. He wrote in another, there is no way out for me. There is only one way out, and that is bloodshed. And this, of course, is also part of the CRT DEI training, that if you are a person of color, there is no real victory. There never is. It doesn't matter what plan gets put into place. You are always the oppressed. It doesn't matter if you got every white person in the world to say, oh, yeah, no, you're right. You're absolutely right. I'm racist. You would never have this moment in which they go, oh, everything's solved. It is a permanent purgatory for people of color that they can never escape. And so, again, not a surprise that here you have this individual who feels there's no way out for me. There's no way for success. White people will never understand my struggle as a black man. And so the only way out for me is to shoot and take out as many white people as possible, doing the world good. It's virtuousy. In statements to law enforcement officers after his arrest, Cobb reportedly said that he idolized other mass shooters. Investigators found more of his homicidal ideations on his cell phone and talking about, building up and currently lacking the weaponry he needed. Eventually, writing, my rampage will soon happen. I plan to now continue accumulating the necessary equipment needed to execute. Once all equipment is in, time will then tell you will all die, all presumably being white people, because, of course, that's whom it was that he said he wanted to take out as many of. Yeah, I mean, give this guy a gold badge for being the top of class success for DEI and CRT. Again, likely, probably not going to hear a lot about this story in the mainstream media. And I think we all know why. Because, again, if you listen to the media, you listen to the Democrats in the White House, he's not the guy that's the problem. The people we need to watch out for are the people that he was trained to watch out for and trained to kill. That's white people, the bad ones, domestic terrorists, all those people. Streaming live, KSGF.com and YouTube. That YouTube stream is sponsored by Springfield Wraps, who designed the KSGF studio. They can wrap your vehicles, do windows, your office, whatever it may be, and they can design it for you as well. If you have your own design, they can do that, or they'll work with you on it. CBCO Bleed Red Blood Drive. This is with the Springfield Cardinals Community Blood Center of the Ozarks. If you donate in May or June at a CBCO donor center or mobile blood drive, you're going to get 2 tickets to a Springfield Cardinal game and a custom baseball shirt. How about that? Go to cbco.org for more information. First Alert Forecast sponsored by St. Clair of the Ozarks Home Improvements from Color 10 Fox 49 meteorologist Tom Schmidt. Scattered showers, storms today, mainly afternoon. Otherwise, mostly cloudy, a high near 70. Isolated showers and storms into the early evening. Should wrap up by around 8 o'clock. Then mostly cloudy. Overnight low of 56. Tomorrow, partly sunny, 78. And Thursday, a 70% chance of showers and thunderstorms. Then mostly cloudy with a high near 77. The opening or the early part of the program, it talked about this clear graduate of DEI and CRT that was arrested, a black man who was going to take out as many white people as possible because of their traditional indoctrination of those programs. White people, they're the oppressors, and they'll never understand me as a black person. I can never get ahead, and so forth. The stereotypes. And fortunately, he was arrested before he was able to do that. He also was planning, according to his own writings, to find a place in which the least likelihood somebody would be armed in New Jersey fit the bill because of gun control laws there, recognizing that he would be able to kill more people as long as there were less people that were able to arm themselves and stop him. So perfect illustration of the success of left-wing ideology in real life. There's a story about Jewish students across the United States, and they're essentially, though independent of one another, speaking in one voice about what is the source of all of this anti-Semitism that is clearly observable in the United States, and primarily we're seeing it on college campuses, and a lot of it in high schools as well, particularly in blue cities. And what they are noting is the real problem here is twofold. One, the faculty and staff at these institutions of learning, but also DEI. I mean, it's a very, very clear to the victims here that this is DEI. Jewish students across the United States expressing concern for their safety, noting that school faculty as well as diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives are promoting anti-Semitic views that ratchet up the political temperature on campus. George Washington University student Sabrina Sofer graduated early as a junior in December. She said that there's no balance of opinions among the faculty. While the school has emphasized diversity, she notes that it's only diversity surrounding a singular idea. Quote, students are not learning how to think, but they're learning about what to think. There's no real academic rigor that surrounds learning how to think, so they're just getting pushed to get a grade. Sofer said that students spend a significant amount of time being fed propaganda on social media, which affirms the notions that they are learning in class and keeps them isolated in their own echo chamber. Adding that this conduct by faculty and students, in addition to widespread acceptance of diversity, equity, and inclusion, have turned George Washington University into a concerning and dangerous environment. Quote, there's also no respect for American values in terms of, there's a lot of anti-Western seedlings in the DEI idea as a whole, binary notions, very false notions of the oppressor and the oppressed, while all white people are oppressors. And Jews just don't fit into that framework at all, so they're planning false binary notions on entire societies when they don't even make sense. Well, they don't have to make sense. This is why you're not allowed to question them. Amanda Silberstein, a second-year student at Cornell University, criticized the actions of faculty there, noting that the ongoing sentiments about Israel and Jews have left her ostracized and socially isolated from classmates. Quote, I just encountered a lot of hostility when I do express my identity and my pride in it. So much for diversity. Isn't this tremendous? And again, it is an illustration of the truth about left-wing policies. What they claim they're doing, the opposite occurs. They claim the E is inclusion, or the I is inclusion. And so you've got three letters here: diversity, equity, and inclusion. Now, you would think that inclusion would not mean exclusion, but that's exactly what it means. Of course, there's a lack of diversity as well, which is part of the point here. There is no diversity in thought. And there's not even diversity in skin color. I mean, this is the white is the oppressor, and people of color are the good guys, the oppressed. So it masquerades itself as it's a Trojan horse, pretending to be one thing when in fact it's the opposite, pretending to be a gift to bringing everyone together, pretending to be a gift of creating diversity, equity, and inclusion when in fact it does the exact opposite. Silberstein noted that professors are participating in illegal rallies on campus and spouting anti-Semitic ideologies to impressionable students in the classroom, noting that one teacher's assistant in charge of an Egyptian history course moved their discussion session to the encampment for a day. Professor Russell Rickford, who was put on leave after describing Hamas's bloody operation as exhilarating, has also visited the encampments and spoken with students. According to Silberstein, quote, "He's still here. He's still a professor engaging in activity on our campus, and no action is taken against him. No action has been taken against any student, even after repeated warnings for the repercussions of their actions. They've all been empty threats." Students, according to Silberstein, are being told by professors that Israeli Jews are settler colonists and have been openly critical of Zionism in class. They're teaching opinions as fact and really removing any opportunity for any open dialogue, which is frankly a shame. And it's something that, I really think about every day that I'm wasting my tuition dollars on. University of Texas at Austin student Andrew Goldberg told Fox News Digital that students have been spat at and yelled at for wearing a yarmulke on campus. One of his friends was told to go back to Germany. And the story goes on, but there's a common theme here. And what there is an accompaniment here with this theme is silence. You will not have any recognition by those who promote DEI and CRT that it has resulted in some undesirable results. Now, some would argue that these are the results that they do want. But I do also believe that there are people who just want to get along. And they're told this is the way to do it. And they're otherwise meaningful individuals. Some would call them useful idiots. But because they want to get along and they're told that this is how to do it. It's, we can't have a peaceful society unless white people just really acknowledge the harm that they've done. Unless white people acknowledge that they are oppressors, whether they realize it or not. We just cannot have harmony without that acknowledgement. Well, how's that harmony coming along? You have Jews being run off campus. You have the calls for genocide. You have, in New Jersey, what would be a mass shooter arrested who's spouting DEI, CRT ideology. I mean, it's everywhere. At what point? I mean, I don't know that there is any ideology that we have the benefit of watching right before our very eyes play out. And what is, I would argue, pretty ridiculous about the notion that one doesn't have anything to do with the other is the fact that every one of these anti-Semitic protesters, every one of these people who are calling for the elimination of Jews, or this guy in New Jersey that was going to take out as many white people as possible, the words they're saying are diversity, equity, and inclusion words. They are critical race theory words. They are spouting the ideology. If you had all of these instances occurring and the chant was always "Make America Great Again," would it be legitimate to claim that, well, they don't have anything to do with MAGA? Of course not. I mean, if they're out there chanting, "Make America Great Again," then I think it's fair to say that that is born out of the MAGA movement. Yet when you have tens of thousands of angry young people who, in some instances, word for word, using the instruction of CRT and DEI, we're supposed to pretend that there's no connection whatsoever. And it doesn't stop left-wing cities from having DEI coordinators or having these left-wing run corporations throwing DEI events. Let's just keep on trucking on and churning out that hate like a factory working people at overtime. And the results will come with it. This is Springfield's Talk 104.1. I'm Nick Reed. Nazi flag-bearing man from St. Louis area who crashed a truck into barriers near the White House enters a plea. Now, you may not remember this story. I remember this story. I remember this story because understand, we were in a different world then. This was pre-October 7th. And the breathless reporting by the media that someone had crashed a rental truck into the White House barriers and then donned a Nazi flag before his arrest. And a lot of people were suspicious because the way the flag was laid out, it made it appear as if whomever was on the scene, I would guess it would have been Secret Service. They would have, to some degree, been involved, obviously. I mean, you're crashing into the White House fence. And that they laid it out so the media could see this Nazi flag. And, of course, remember, pre-October 7th, this is when the media was relatively successful. And the Democrats were relatively successful in convincing people that anti-Semitism was something that was within the Republican Party, that anti-Semitism was something that was an infestation within MAGA country and Trump supporters. And so there was a lot of excitement of covering this. It went away quickly because it turned out it was one Sai Varshith Kandula, a 20-year-old person of color from St. Louis. And he had mental problems, and the reason that he had the Nazi flag was because he's like, I admire Hitler and, all that sort of stuff. But it turned out he wasn't some right-wing white guy who was a Trump supporter. So the story went away. But the at the time, prior to the recognition that this did not fit the stereotype that we've all been told is the real neo-Nazi and anti-Semite. This was before October 7th, and so the assumption, of course, was if it was a white person, it wasn't some arts major, some angry white chick, No, it was going to be a right-winger because pre-October 7th, the world did not see the cicadas of anti-Semitism crawling out of the ground. You see, we forget the cicada. We don't know much about the cicadas, but we know that they're emerging. They're going to emerge, and then we will all see them, and we will all hear them. And that is what we have had the benefit in terms of intellectual curiosity and having a better understanding of what is going on in our culture, of these riots and these protests and these encampments, is that we now have a better understanding of the truth. We should always seek the truth, correct? Try to find out the truth. And I saw this story pop up, and it's just, there was almost this nostalgia there. It's like, oh, I remember that. And how the media jumped all over it at first because Nazis are Trump supporters. Oh, how times have changed. Springfield's Talk 1041. I'm Nick Reed. We're beginning to see a number of stories pop up about generally universities who are in the spotlight right now and worried about their donors. They are diverting DEI funding away from DEI because people, particularly, and it's money. It's money for the universities. This is what they concern themselves with. It's money. And they could not give two hoots about anti-Semitism other than if donors began to threaten to withhold money, or they do withhold money. Then all of a sudden they care. It's about money. There's a story, UNC Chapel Hill. Board of Trustees votes to divert DEI funding, redirecting it to campus public safety. And there have been a number of other stories. I think a couple of universities in Virginia have pulled DEI funding, or at least postponed it for a year. And we need to be aware that these aren't, they're not they're a little tiny tactical, I suppose, victory to some degree. It's a victory in the context that enough Americans are aware of this extremely toxic and divisive ideology that these universities are recognizing the financial impact it may have. And though their hearts and minds aren't changed, the fear of their pocketbook changing is what is changing their behavior. Now, the point ultimately being is even if you have some institution, whether it's a company, a municipality, a university that says, oh, yes, oh, yeah, well, we are going to divest of this wicked ideology. We are going to instead take those dollars and put it into something that is beneficial and positive. Do not mistake that for a change of heart, a change of mind. They will simply repackage their hateful and divisive ideology as something else. This is how it is that evil oftentimes on earth here prevails against good. Because generally speaking, good people are just good, and they don't go around thinking of ways to do harm to people. They just live their lives, love their families, love their coworkers, try to be honest people. Folks who are evil, however, are very proactive, and they're conniving, and they're obsessed with getting at people and implementing their ways. And so good people have to be on guard constantly. And simply because good people raise up and threaten to withhold money from some of these universities, causing the universities to say, oh, yes, we're going to back away. Or maybe some companies, they're worried about their shares, their shareholders, and again, money. So they say, oh, well, we're going to back away from that. That does not mean that those individuals who have an obsession with creating these divisions and seeing certain groups of people as bad, that they're just going to quit being that way. They will repackage and come again. Springfield's Talk 104.1. I'm Nick Reed. This is Springfield's Talk 1041. I am Nick Reed. The Pyramid Roofing Company talk at text line 447 KSGF. So the UN has quietly revised the casualty numbers coming out of Gaza by like about half. And this was done very quietly for a number of different reasons. One, because it indicates that, as is consistent with past behavior, you have these institutions, including now the United States, overestimating anything that is going to make Israel look bad. So you have, they keep touting out these numbers. We keep hearing 30,000, 35,000, and these are numbers that come from Hamas, unquestioned. The UN halved the estimate of women and children killed in Gaza. According to the UN's Office for Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, some 9,500 women, 14,500 children were reported to have been killed in Gaza since the October 7th Hamas attacks in Israel. Less than a week later, those numbers dropped significantly. 5,000 women, 8,000 children, the National Post reported. Now, of course, many people are going to say, and this is a way of dismissing the propaganda. Say, well, it doesn't matter. I mean, whoa, but still 8,000 children and 5,000 women. Yes, this is true. But there's, of course, a whole other story. Who's actually responsible for these deaths? I mean, we know that it's not uncommon for Hamas to launch missiles into Gaza facilities, killing people within Gaza. This is not uncommon. We also know that at times in which the Israeli military, the government, was telling people to evacuate from certain areas of Gaza because they were going to start an offensive, that it was Hamas that told them, no, don't do it, putting them in harm's way. They do this deliberately, and they do it deliberately so that their allies in this battle, propaganda battle, can use those deaths that Hamas is responsible for as a way to pin it on Israel, which is something that, unfortunately, the United States has been happy to do. The sad thing about it is that it actually encourages Hamas to do that more. It encourages Hamas to increase the number of children and women they use as protection, to increase the number of women and children that they deliberately put in harm's way, because they get rewarded from this administration for doing so with the propaganda. Look at what the evil Jews did. Look at those horrible Jews. Look at the Jews grabbing and killing your children in the middle of the night. 35,000 of them. Don't question the numbers. You know, sometimes it's easy to forget how legitimately detached, humanitarianly speaking, these people are, including this White House. It is undeniable. When you have Hamas that puts its own women and children in harm's way, deliberately causing their deaths, with the purpose, the goal being that other people in the world will use that against the Jews. When it works, of course they're going to do it more. That's what happens when you do something with a particular goal in mind and it works. You do more of it. Point being, when this administration and the United Nations and any other institution or world leader plays into the whole goal by Hamas, and that is to point to these deaths of women and children and blame the Jews for it and demand that Israel behave in a certain way and alter what it is that they're doing because of these deaths, then you're going to have Hamas put more women and children in harm's way. It will result in more innocent lives. So, and this is typical. The people who claim that they care most for the women and children, the people who are out there touting the deaths of the women and children as proof that Israel needs to take a different route here, are the people who are creating more of those deaths. All of that aside, there's another lesson to be learned in this. You may recall in the opening days of retaliation for the terrorist attack on October 7th, there was a great frenzy over accusations that Israel had shot a missile at a hospital. And where did the media, where did the White House get their information, their intelligence that this was something that the Israelis did? Well, it was from Hamas. And it would turn out very provably to not only not have been true, but it was Hamas that shot the missile and hit the parking garage as part of the hospital. And the media, because it was such a stark example, and it was still in the early days of all of this, the media, there was this public self-reflection. You had editorials written about the whole, we will do better. This is a learning opportunity for us to not be so quick to just take the words of the terrorist at face value and report it as if it's news. And there were some people that noted, yeah, right. We'll see how long that lasts. And I think probably the day after, maybe 2 days after, right back at it. And the proof is the fact that they still continue to use Hamas talking points. And this is yet another example in which they have been going, they've just been spitting out these numbers of the individuals dead. And again, without the context of the fact that this is what Hamas wants, and Hamas is largely responsible for most of these deaths by putting these people deliberately in harm's way, hoping that they'll be killed. All of that aside, the media is just repeating the exact same behavior that they did regarding the hospital. You have an incident that occurs. You have Hamas saying, oh, here's what happened. The media picks it up and runs with it. They get caught embarrassed in the moment and the apologizing and will do better. But then they immediately go right back to it. And this is why you have, and very quietly note, the United Nations, those numbers that everyone keeps touting from Hamas, well, there's kind of nowhere near those actual numbers. If you've noticed this time around, the media isn't apologizing. The media isn't doing any sort of self-reflecting, and the media is not writing editorials about how they will do better. I guess they figure at this point, to hell with it. Propaganda's propaganda. Look at the weather in a moment. More rain on the way. The latest news now. First Alert Forecast sponsored by Wolfpack Cleaners, your residential and commercial cleaning professionals from Color 10 Fox 49, meteorologist Tom Schmidt. Scattered showers and thunderstorms today, mainly afternoon, otherwise mostly cloudy, a high near 70. We shall see those isolated showers and thunderstorms wrapping up around 8 o'clock tonight. Overnight, cloudy, low of 56. Partly sunny tomorrow, 78, and a 70% chance of showers and storms then mostly cloudy Thursday with a high near 77. The Pyramid Roofing Company talk and text line, excellent point here, saying, at what age are they classified as children? Children may be anyone 19 years old and younger. Hamas has soldiers 14 years old and up, and this is true as well. Listen, there are numerous layers in this cake of deception, and you can note numerous legitimate, meaningful reasons why Hamas should not be believed. Which, even, here's the thing, you would think with journalism, even if Hamas had a track record of not spreading propaganda lies, not using its own people and their lives and deaths for propaganda purposes, even if they were had a track record of being pretty accurate in their claims, you would think as a journalist, you'd say, listen, I know that you're trustworthy and all, but listen, you are in a battle against these other people. They're telling us something different, and so we need some form of verification. Even if Hamas was honest, you'd think that journalists would do that. But there are so many reasons to know that Hamas, again, we know, one, that they lie about the numbers. Two, what numbers there are that we don't really know the accurate number of. We know that they are deliberately killed by Hamas or put in a position to be killed for propaganda purposes. And to the point of the person who's texting in, when they talk about children, they use children in battle. Children are, in many instances, also suicide bombers and soldiers. But this does not stop the media, and this is what's just deplorable. The White House, knowing all of this information, they still use Hamas's, the talking points of the terrorists. The latest traffic, I'm Nick Reed. Quote, my God. CNN data guru says Sunbelt polling is absolute disaster for Joe Biden. All right, let's listen to some of this conversation on these latest poll numbers. I do believe this is reflecting off, yes, it is, the New York Times Siena College survey, which, by the way, we are increasingly being told that we cannot trust these polls. This is CNN, and this is, the setup here is you've got the gal who's the host, and she's, they've got the TV there, and then the CNN senior data reporter, Harry Enton, explaining what the breakdown of these numbers mean.
There's new polling out this morning from the New York Times showing Donald Trump with an edge over President Biden in some key battleground states. CNN's Harry Enton obviously is standing right here staring at all of you here with me now.
Scary.
You are a terrifying man.
Yeah.
Okay, talk to me about the new polling out from the New York Times. What is it telling you?
Yeah, I think it's essentially saying that we have a divide between the Sun Belt and Great Lake battleground states, all right? These are all 6 states that Joe Biden won last time around. They won it by the closest margin of any of the states he won. Look, these Sun Belt battleground states, frankly, for the Joe Biden campaign, these numbers are an absolute disaster. The smallest lead is in Arizona for Donald Trump. He's up 6. Look at this, 9 in Georgia, 13 in Nevada. My goodness gracious, my God. That is a huge lead. No Democrat has lost that state since John Kerry lost it back in 2004. How about these Great Lake battleground states? This is something that the Joe Biden campaign can work with. Look, Pennsylvania, Donald Trump up 3, but that's well within the margin of error. Wisconsin, Donald Trump up 1, well within the margin of error. And actually, a Joe Biden lead well within the margin of error, up a point here. This they can work with the Joe Biden campaign. This, the Donald Trump campaign, absolutely loves, and it looks like a lot of the other polling on the Sun Belt battlegrounds.
When you're looking into the numbers, why do you think Biden is doing better in the Great Lakes and Trump is doing so much better in the Sun Belt?
Yeah, the Trump coalition is changing. That's basically what's cooking here. This is at least one of the big reasons why. So this is among likely voters in all these battleground states we just spoke about. Back in 2020, 84% of the Trump campaigns, the Trump coalition was white. Look where it is now. It's 78%. The non-white portion of the Trump coalition, it was 13% in 2020. Look at this now. It's 19%. So the Trump coalition is becoming more diverse. And of course, those Sun Belt battleground states are more diverse than the Great Lake battleground states.
You're looking at the Nevadas and the Arizonas here.
Of course, if you look at Nevada, Arizona, heavy Hispanic population, Georgia, heavily African-American population, Michigan does have some black voters in it, but Pennsylvania and Wisconsin are heavily, heavily white.
Now, there are a few things about this that are actually quite interesting. I want to note, he's talking, when he mentioned that the makeup of white voters last time around was 84% and now it's 78%, that's not, that is not a drop in the numbers. It's not saying, well, this percentage of white people vote for Trump over someone else. It is the makeup of Trump supporters. The point being, as he specified here, that the reason that number has come down, not because there are less white people that are supporting Donald Trump, but because there is a disproportionately high increase of people of color voting or saying that they will vote for and they support Donald Trump. But even beyond that, the question, it's just amazing how they gloss over these things. The question, well, why is it that Biden seems to be doing better in these Great Lakes states? And the answer is, well, because those states are mostly white. And so what is being explained here is that the states that are more diverse, the states that have a greater degree of voters of color, are supporting Donald Trump. And the more white states, or as you might hear sometimes Democrats describe them as states with too many white people, Biden does better in those states. Now, he isn't winning in them, according to this New York Times poll, other than Michigan, and I'll talk about that here in a moment, by I think it was 1 point or 2 points. Isn't that fascinating? You would think that that would be worthy of an additional conversation from these folks over at CNN, that what we've been told all this time, what we continue to be told, of course, is, that Donald Trump is racist and that the party of diversity is, of course, the Democrat Party, and that Joe Biden, we all know it, if you are black, you have to vote for Joe Biden, because if you don't, then you ain't black. But in the states that are these battleground states, the more diversity, the more people of color, the better Trump does. The more white, the better Joe Biden is doing. Isn't that fascinating that this network that is part of the disinformation machinery, claiming that the party of diversity is the Democrats and the party of whiteness, Republicans, that these statistical facts did not give them any pause whatsoever. They just glossed over, just keep moving on, nothing to see here whatsoever, to perhaps their peril. Now, when it comes to Michigan, I'll mention look, this is the plan, right? Turning against Israel may be working. Dearborn, Michigan specifically, but the entire state has a disproportionately high Muslim population, which disproportionately, when polling is taken, fully admit that they hate Jews, with a disproportionately high number of people, and that they support terrorist attacks against Jews. And it's been noted even amongst allies of the Biden campaign and people who support Joe Biden that he has had a pretty precarious time trying to figure out how to win back the anti-Semitic vote within the Democrat Party. And perhaps, I just think it's interesting that as he continues to abandon Israel, as he continues to do favors for and strategically align, giving aid and comfort to Hamas, that of the battleground states, there's one state that he has managed to start doing a little better in, and it's the state of Michigan. So arguably, catering to the Hitler Youth is helping him politically in the state of Michigan. Good job, Michigan. Springfield's Talk 1041. I'm Nick Reed. Streaming live, KSGF.com. Excuse me, the Pyramid Roofing Company, talk a text line 447-KSGF. Just how extreme the lead is in a couple of these states in particular for Donald Trump. According to this New York Times poll coming up here just after we get a traffic update. And then also Virginia. This is a state that has consistently for the last several presidential elections been a Democrat state. New poll there. Trump virtually tied with Biden. Springfield's Talk 1041. I'm Nick Reed. First Alert Forecast, sponsored by St. Clair of the Ozarks Home Improvements from Color 10 Fox 49 meteorologist Tom Schmidt. Scattered showers, thunderstorms, mainly afternoon today, high near 70. Tonight, isolated showers, storms wrapping up before 8. Overnight, clouds 56, partly sunny 78 tomorrow, and a 70% chance of showers and thunderstorms Thursday, then mostly cloudy, a high near 77. CBS had a report this morning, and it's looking at states in which election deniers are going to be instrumental in working the polls. Isn't it? This is the irony of this approach by the media. They are trying to already create doubt in your minds as to the outcome of the election if Trump wins, based off the characterization of election deniers being involved. So in other words, we know election deniers are bad and horrible, right? I mean, they're awful, except for the Democrats. Hakeem Jeffries, Hillary Clinton, and all of these individuals. The media itself, when it comes to past elections, the only election deniers that are bad are those who have questions about irregularities in the 2020 election. And so what they're doing is they are taking what they have crafted as this persona of an individual that is bad for the country, that should not be trusted. Why? Because they question the outcome of the election. But the whole point in doing it is so that you question the validity of the upcoming election because they are poll watchers or because they are local county clerks. So in other words, they're doing exactly what it is that they're demonizing these people for doing, and that is questioning the election, questioning the legitimacy of the election, questioning the outcome of the election. It's just they're preemptively laying the groundwork that, well, I don't know, got these election deniers in there. We may not be able to accept the outcome of this election if it goes Trump's way because these are Trump supporters who denied the election the first time around. Or last time. These numbers in the New York Times poll, where Trump continues to dominate swing states, and he does best in states with people of color, with a higher number of people of color, whereas Biden tends to do a little better, though he doesn't best Trump necessarily in most of the states. But the states where he closes the gap, it's mostly white people. Michigan being the exception, where according to the latest poll, he was winning by 1, and this is arguably because of his proactive effort to garner the support of anti-Semitics within the large Muslim population in Michigan, and so that has potentially moved the needle a bit for him. But these are the numbers. Now, the New York Times, Siena, Philadelphia Inquirer poll polled both registered voters and likely voters. With the exception of the state of Michigan, they're pretty much in line with one another. So I'll just read to you, other than Michigan, which we'll hit separately here, the likely voters, because the difference between registered voters and likely voters, registered voters may not plan on voting at all. They're like, just sitting this one out. Whereas somebody who's likely to vote, at least their intent at this time is to vote. When it comes to Arizona, it's 49-43 with Trump besting Joe Biden by 6 percentage points. Georgia, where we currently have one of the many attempts to imprison Donald Trump, he's beating Joe Biden amongst likely voters by 9 points, 50-41. These trials just really don't seem to be working for the Democrats, do they? In Nevada, with a very high person of color population, amongst likely voters, 13 percentage points Donald Trump is beating. Nevada has not, this was referenced in the CNN analysis. Nevada hasn't gone, I think it's Nevada, hasn't gone Republican since 08, or 04 rather. 51% Trump, 38% for Biden, for a 13-point difference there. Pennsylvania, Trump up 3, 48-45. Wisconsin up 1, 47-46. Now, Michigan, this is where Biden is up by 1 in Michigan. Again, that disproportionately high anti-Semitic vote in Michigan. Amongst likely voters. Now, registered voters, Trump is actually up by 7. And that is interesting because, again, all of the other states, the registered voters and the likely voters are pretty much in line with one another, except for Michigan. And that's a massive difference. And what that tells us is that you have a significant number of people who are registered in Michigan that do not plan, at least at this point, they're saying they're not going to vote. But if they did decide to vote, that would be a tremendous push for Trump. Now, if Michigan is focused on by the Trump campaign and they really do some polling to see whether or not that is consistently accurate, then you could probably expect to see Trump get over to Michigan to try and get those people out to vote, because getting the registered voters out to vote is something that is going to help him, at least according to this poll. And then there is Virginia, where Joe Biden and Donald Trump are virtually tied. This according to the Fabrizio Ward and Impact Research Survey. Neck and neck in the Old Dominion state. Biden 43, Trump 42, well within the 4.4% margin of error. This is a state that has voted consistently blue since 2008. With the election of former President Barack Obama. Before that, it was a red state, and so this is a state that for a presidential election after election after election has been blue. I mean, it is a blue state, and now you got a virtual tie there. So this, of course, also is good news, because in addition to Donald Trump currently leading in these swing states, there are some of these states, Virginia being one of them, that isn't considered a toss-up that all of a sudden may be considered a toss-up. And then another poll here that plays into some of these other results, 39% of respondents, when it came to what's important in this race to you? What are you voting based off of here? So 39% of respondents listed behavior, leadership, personal characteristics that they most associate with Trump's presidency. This is regarding Trump's presidency, that is. 24% said the economic policies are what they think of when they think of Trump when he was president before. Stimulus, 9%. Oh no, sorry, that's 24, economic policy / stimulus. 9% immigration, 5 foreign policy, 5 January 6th, 4 COVID-19 pandemic. So the two areas that the Democrats are banking on, focusing on, in order, not COVID so much, but really January 6th, right? I mean, this is their one go-to. Danger to democracy. That all goes back to January 6th. You need to be afraid. That goes back to January 6th. The worst attack on our country ever, January 6th. And you have only 5% of people that associate that with Trump. That is not good news for Democrats who have absolutely nothing whatsoever to run on in terms of meaningful results, but instead are trying to fearmonger that only 5% of voters even associate Trump or even think about that in any sort of meaningful way when it comes to evaluating Trump and whether or not he should be back in the White House. Springfield's Talk 1041. I'm Nick Reed. A1 Custom Car Care, all of your car care needs, financing available, even if you do not have the best credit in the world. This month, air conditioning inspection, half off, 3-year, 36,000-mile warranty. I'm listing off a few of the bullet points why it is that you get superior service offerings at A1 Custom Car Care. I just picked up my truck yesterday, and I had it in there for just a couple of other things. But while it was in there, I said, do the air conditioner check. And mine was pretty good. I mean, it was, they went ahead and just kind of charged it anyhow because it was a little bit uncharged or low or whatever. I don't understand these things. But overall, it was good and in working condition. But I took advantage of the half off in the month of May for those AC inspections and, making sure that it is running at full capacity. Because if it isn't, then it can actually be doing harm to it. And you don't want that because then that could cost you in the long run. A1 Custom Car Care, all of your car care needs. Couple of text messages. Well, these polls, we're talking about the recent polls that, once again, in these swing states show Donald Trump is beating Joe Biden. And by the way, I don't know if some of you get this, there's this unspoken sense that Trump has to win all of those. That's not the case. He only has to win a certain number of them. And now you can't give a hard and fast. He has to win this one, this one, and this one because, when you do once again see that Virginia, a state that has been solidly blue since 2008, he's tied Biden according to the polls there amongst likely voters, then you start to think, well, maybe, this changes the dynamic here to some degree. But we keep seeing all of these swing states that were swing states Joe Biden won last time around and Trump winning in either all of them or all but one of them. That's he doesn't have to win all of those. It's just some of them. Text message, well, the polls make it so that the Smurf cult machine knows about how many votes they must manufacture to achieve victory. And this other text doesn't sound like it's in line with that one I just read, but they do go together to some degree. Good morning. I'm starting to believe Trump's election will be a tsunami when you start hearing these poll numbers. Now, the response is legitimately, well, one, they're polls. You can't believe polls. But I got to tell you, the polls in the primaries that occurred when the polls were being taken for these early primaries were all turning out to be pretty accurate. Arguably, polling in a primary is different than a general election for a number of reasons. But there is this cycle, an argument that the polls have been much more consistent than they have been over the last several election cycles. Well, they'll steal it anyway. We know that they're going to, and whether that is by way of illegal ballot box stuffing, if you will, or by taking, by expanding the ease in which people can commit voter fraud. Drop boxes. I mean, drop boxes is just, it is just screams for voter fraud. They're not, they say they're monitored, but even when video catches, as we saw in 2000 Mules, people stuffing armfuls of ballots into the drop boxes, they're like, oh, well, that doesn't prove anything. So even when they say they're monitored, that largely is irrelevant if it's an area that's run by Democrats. And so there is great concern. But I want to go back just to, this is something, I'm not telling you this to make you feel better, though I think it may. The breakdown is done. And you look at the national vote and they say, oh, well, Biden won by 7 million votes, whatever it is. That's not what matters. Fortunately, it does not matter. What matters is the Electoral College count. And in the states that Biden won that put him over the edge, collectively it was about 22,000 votes that pushed him over the edge. And we know that in the last election, there was a lot of shenanigans that went on. Whether it was ballot harvesting or the drop boxes or whatever, right? They did a significant amount of it. I think most of us agree with that. When you look at what the polls are now versus what they were then, even the national vote, which the previous, when he won against Hillary and lost against Joe Biden, he never was ahead. When he beat Hillary, she was ahead in the national polls, but he is either tied or comes out ahead in the national polls. And in addition to that, when you look at, it's just, even with all of the effort they put into the shenanigans, and still it was only 22,000 votes that they were able to win by ultimately. I don't think that that's insurmountable, given how many people out there have switched from 4 years ago what they thought was going to be the best direction for the country versus what they feel now. Now, that doesn't mean that this is a shoo-in. It's going to be easy. It's going to require people to get out. It's going to require people to vote. It's going to require people to get over that instinct that it doesn't matter because they're going to cheat anyway. Sometimes when people cheat, they still don't win. I mean, do we think that Democrats only started up with the shenanigans during the last election? I think we all recognize that it occurred when Hillary was running. The advantage Democrats had was COVID and the allowance of drop boxes and increased ballot harvesting and mail-in voting. And, yeah, they exploited that. They took advantage of that. But it still only got them 22,000 enough extra votes in order to, or over the top in the 3 relevant states. And I do not think that that is something that is insurmountable by any stretch for the Trump team, which I think is good news. Springfield's Talk 1041. I'm Nick Reed. Regarding voter fraud, we'll get this piece up. Nick's must-read headlines at KSGF.com. And the Federalist, Green Bay clerk violates swing state election law again. And it lays out, it's an admission that she violated the law. She's a left-winger. And it has to do with Wisconsin. Again, this is what makes it very easy for voter fraud. You can not even be registered to vote, show up to vote, and register that day. And part of this, the law is very clear. The Election Commission, after each election, is required to mail postcards to voters who registered on Election Day. This is part of an audit, and this is the law, in order to make sure those people are actually the people who they said they were. Or any postcard that is returned as undeliverable, or if the clerk is informed that the voter resides at a different address than the one provided on Election Day, the election official must change the status of the voter from eligible to ineligible on the registration list. Well, ultimately what they found, to the tune of hundreds, she wasn't doing it. She didn't do a single one. These were fraudulent registrations, and she let them stand. And the explanation, the response to the complaint is, well, she just didn't know. She didn't understand the law. Oh, that's how it works? I guess if you're a Democrat, that's how it works. What a privileged life to be a Democrat. You get caught violating election laws. as a clerk, and your official response is, oopsie, I just didn't know. I didn't understand the law. Oh, okay. There are a number of people that also believe, and I do not believe this for a number of reasons, that the polls showing Trump is doing well is part of the media conspiracy in order to suppress Trump voters from coming out to vote so that Biden will win. Well, the problem with that is there are some states in which he needs to win that are swing states that Biden won last time, that they show up very, very close. I suspect, and listen, the suspicion is earned. The suspicion is completely legitimate. But I suspect that if the polls were under for Trump, that some people might say that the media is doing that in order to make Republicans think, or Trump supporters think, well, he can't win, he's behind, and to get them to stay at home. And so because the media has earned such tremendous suspicion among the population, what you do is you have people that no matter what it is, whether they report Trump is behind or ahead, the answer is, well, they're doing that to suppress the Republican vote. And I don't believe that aside from what might be their motivating factors and their earned history of having inconsistent polls, inconsistent with reality, that is, when you look at the polls and the way that they're coming out, it just doesn't really add up. Because, again, when they show the swing states, and yes, Nevada, he's up by 13, but then Pennsylvania only 1. Well, if the whole plan to suppress Trump voters is to make them think, oh, he's going to run away with this thing, so you need not get out to vote, then why wouldn't you do that in Pennsylvania, where arguably it's going to be much tougher than in an area like Nevada, where it has a high Hispanic population, and polls have consistently shown he has gained a lot of support there. So it makes sense that those numbers are going to go up, whereas Pennsylvania is more white. And what we're learning, interestingly enough, of all the swing states, the states that have the most people of color are the states in which Donald Trump is doing the best, and the states that are more all white or closer to being all white are the states in which Joe Biden, he doesn't necessarily win according to the polls in those states, but he does better than he does in the states with more diversity. News in 60 seconds. I'm Nick Reed. I want a great homeloan.com. Of course you want a great home loan. Why wouldn't you want a great home loan? I don't know. Maybe you're a lefty and you just enjoy misery. You enjoy having something to complain about. It may not be for you. But if you love life and you're always looking to improve and have the best service and goods possible, then when it comes to your home loans, I want a great homeloan.com. It's pretty easy to remember. If you forget it, like, what was that? Said I need a great home loan? Wish I had a great home. What is it? Just go to ksgf.com and find Nick's endorsements, and you'll see it there. MSNBC contributor Claire McCaskill, because yes, this is how far she has fallen, said yesterday on Deadline that there were so many weird things about the supporters and rallygoers of former President Donald Trump. I'm going to read to you what she said instead of playing the audio because, you know, her voice. Quote, yeah, and there's so many things that are weird about the people who have this underlying loyalty to Donald Trump. There is two categories. There's the category of the cowardly Republicans who are afraid not to be for Donald Trump publicly, even though behind his back they think he's a horrible person, a horrible leader, and a horrible, horrible president. Then there's the bucket of people who really believe in this guy, to which Nicole Wallace said, well, who is in that one? The people at his rallies, his supporters, Wallace says. McCaskill said, it's more probably than 30% of the GOP. It's probably 25% of the country, you know, that believe that his stuff, that they believe what he says. They actually think he's a good businessman. I mean, this is one of the worst businessmen ever in the history of the planet. I don't know. Even if he's ever totally been, you would know better than I would. But it doesn't look like he's ever actually been flush. It always looks like he's been this close to debt outweighing asset for most of his adult life. But these folks think, oh, he'll be a good president because he's such a good businessman. All right, well, there's a number of things about this. Number one, this is full acknowledgement by Claire McCaskill. She has no concept of the private sector. To claim that being in debt, even if at times the debt is outweighing the assets, in her mind, that means that you are the worst business person in the world. That is her grasp on how this sort of stuff works in this country or in a free market. I mean, is it any wonder that people like Claire McCaskill, who end up never in their lives having any real meaningful private sector experience, make these decisions that are horrible and that are damaging to the average American when it comes to putting burdens on businesses? These are people who think that it's good for the economy to increase taxes on businesses. It's good for the consumer to increase regulation and burdens on products and services. I mean, it is such a demonstration of the cluelessness. And for her to deem Donald Trump as being one of the worst business people ever in the world because he has debt, she's an idiot. Which is why she's relegated to MSNBC, of course. You can always, this is another sign of what you see on these programs, particularly CNN and MSNBC. They never give any evidence to back up their argument. Right? So, for example, Claire McCaskill is on MSNBC, presumably as an expert that is supposed to give insight to the viewer. The viewer is supposed to come, hey, we don't know what's going on. Oh, she argues that clearly President Trump is the worst president ever. Okay, now I'm ready to hear the evidence. You know, she doesn't give any. None. She provides no evidence whatsoever regarding what results from his first 4 years in office are a demonstration that he is a bad president or was a bad president or will be a bad president. Why do you think that is? It's the same thing on these shows in covering all of this lawfare, as it's being called, against President Trump. Anytime something doesn't go their way, the judge is awful, the judge is horrible, the courts are trying to rig the election for Donald Trump, but they never talk about the facts of the case. They may talk about the salaciousness of it, and Donald Trump is a liar and he's horrible and he shouldn't be president. But whenever you have in Florida, for example, the judge indefinitely put off the trial because, for among other reasons, the government had to admit that it tampered with evidence, generally not the best thing to do. And you have these analysts that are the so-called experts on some of these networks, and instead of evaluating the merits of her ruling, instead of talking about the implications of it and what violations of law this is and what sort of precedent, they don't talk about any of that. Well, she's clearly trying to rig this election for Trump. They provide no evidence for their arguments ever. It's kind of scary to think that Claire McCaskill once upon a time was an attorney. Yet she doesn't seem to grasp the fact that when you make a claim, you are supposed to back it up with evidence. I suppose this is, again, why she's not in the courtroom and instead relegated to MSNBC. Latest news update. The First Alert Forecast, sponsored by Wolfpack Cleaners, your residential and commercial cleaning professionals, from Color 10 Fox 49 meteorologist Tom Schmidt. Scattered showers and thunderstorms today, mainly afternoon. Otherwise, mostly cloudy, high near 70. That should wrap up by around 8 o'clock tonight. Overnight hours, clouds 56. Tomorrow, partly sunny, high near 78. And Thursday, a 70% chance of showers and thunderstorms, then mostly cloudy, with a high near 77. Sarah Myers, everyone.
Thank you. Quick Draw Gun in Monette. Whether you are looking for a high-quality firearm to add to your collection, fresh used inventory, or maybe you're purchasing your first ever firearm and you're not exactly sure what you need, Quick Draw Gun in Monette is the place to go. They're not high pressure. They are incredibly friendly down there, and they always take the time to answer any questions that you may have. And not only do they have hundreds of firearms for you to choose from, but they also have a great selection of accessories, concealed carry purses for my ladies out there, and they offer minor gunsmithing services and scope mounting services as well. Now, the shop, it's pretty easy to find. It's just a quick drive down 60, about an hour or so away. And in the meantime, if you are looking for a specific firearm out there, or maybe you just have some questions, go ahead and give Brad and his team a call today. You can find all of the contact information for Quick Draw Gun in Monette under the Sarah's Endorsements tab at ksgf.com.
So Claire McCaskill has once again drug herself into MSNBC, and yesterday on Deadline talking about how there's so many weird things about Trump supporters. And as usual, they don't offer any evidence. They don't say, well, Trump supporters say that they support him because of the economy, yet the economy was horrible under him. So that's weird. There are no examples given. Now, we can list out, based off of feedback that you hear from people, and maybe in your own mind, reasons that you support Donald Trump being back in the White House. Reasons that evidently Claire McCaskill thinks are weird, like a good economy. When Trump left office, the inflation rate was 1.4%. 1.4%. We went for some of the gas prices were cheaper than it had been in the entire lifetime of many of you listening, depending on your age. It had been lower, rather. I'd say higher, lower. It had been lower. I mean, it was insane how low those gas prices were. In fact, I know someone whose husband is in the oil industry, and they were very, very concerned about the industry itself. It's sort of ironic because when those prices were so low, it was problematic for the oil industry. Now, of course, the left will try and convince you that the oil industry loves people like Donald Trump because he helps them really take advantage of you and they're greedy. Yet it was during the Trump years that there were concerns in that industry because they weren't able to make as much money just because of supply and demand issues and particularly speculation as to supply in the future because of the pro-energy friendly administration of Donald Trump. And so those prices fell. So is that the sort of thing Claire McCaskill thinks is weird, that the average American preferred to pay $1.25 a gallon for gas instead of $4.25? Having a secure border, at least even attempting to secure the border, not having millions and millions of people come across this country or come across this border into this country illegally, not wanting that, wanting people just to, abide by the law. That's weird to Claire McCaskill. Going to the grocery store and not having to put things back on the shelf. Going to the grocery store and not having to reevaluate what items you purchase and having to purchase less items than you did once upon a time. Claire McCaskill thinks that being confident that you can go to the grocery store and buy what is necessary to feed your family for a week, she thinks that's weird because that's one of the many reasons that Americans want Donald Trump back in the White House. I don't think that's a weird reason at all. Walking down the street and not being clocked by some random individual because he is fully confident that he's going to be right back out on the streets. This complete and total lawlessness, particularly, again, back to the border, people who come into this country and make these insane demands that are only not insane because you have Democrat-run cities that hand them anything they want. Oh, nicest hotel? Sure. Nicest food? Okay. Free health care? Yeah. Prepaid credit cards? Here you go. Oh, you want to make a game of randomly punching people and attacking police officers? Sure. Now, you got to understand, we got to arrest you, but don't worry, you'll be back out by dawn. Americans wanting to get back to law and order is weird to Claire McCaskill, because that's one of the reasons so many people support Donald Trump, his approach. Beyond our borders, peace in the Middle East. She think the Abraham Accords supporting that's weird. She thinks stability because of strength through the United States is a weird thing. She thinks having nations sign direct peace agreements with Israel, Middle Eastern nations, and that historic step towards peace in the Middle East is a weird reason to support Donald Trump. Or Kim Jong-un halting his nuclear activities. That's a weird reason to support him. Putin halting his invasion of Ukraine that began under the Obama administration. Was that another weird one for her? I mean, there are plenty of reasons, whether she agrees with them or not, that people who support Donald Trump support Donald Trump. And for her to think all that is weird, now I think it's weird. Now this is me. Everyone's different. I think it's weird to support a guy who has welcomed millions of illegals into this country, who has, because of that, caused an explosion of overdose deaths in this country. I think it's weird to support a guy when you say you care about kids, whose administration has lost 85,000 kids to sex slavery and sex trafficking and slave labor in this country. To me, that's weird to support that. I think it's weird if you're a person of color to support a guy who says you aren't actually black unless you support him. I think it's weird to support a guy who tells you that you're wrong when you complain about the fact that inflation is having a real-life impact on you and your family. I think it's weird when you have Americans that are struggling to get by, that the current president of the United States is doing these fundraisers with Hollywood elites. Now, Claire McCaskill, she doesn't, to her, that's what's normal. What's weird is the reason that people support Trump. I feel the opposite. As usual, here's perhaps the solution in understanding one another. If instead of an echo chamber, outlets like MSNBC had someone on there that they would actually listen to in order to explain these things. Oh, wait a minute. They did hire Ronna McDaniel at one point to give that perspective. So people like Claire McCaskill would not have to scratch their heads and not be able to figure this stuff out. Last week, one of the MSNBC, it was polling that showed that more people felt democracy is secure under Donald Trump than Joe Biden. And one of the commentators in MSNBC, I just wish someone would explain this to me. Well, they hired someone to do that, but you all pitched a fit because they, would explain that sort of thing to you, and you didn't want to hear it, so they fired her. Incidentally, not to get too broad before we take a quick break here in scope, but this is one of the reasons that the founders recognized that freedom of speech was so very important. It was because without the ability to have conversations, you do not advance and you do not grow. Without the ability, if you live in an echo chamber in which only certain thoughts are allowed and only support for certain elites are allowed, then you become stagnant. You have atrophy. You begin to decay on the vine. And that's why it is that you see it on full display. These people in these left-wing networks that are just so confused. We just don't get it. We can't figure it out. We don't understand. That's because you refuse to learn. You don't even have to accept it. Just listen. You say you want to know why, and then when somebody comes along and says, here's why, we don't want them on the network. They're spreading disinformation. Okay, so you don't want to know why. Then guess what? You are subscribing yourself to a life of ignorance. Congratulations. How advanced of you. Springfield's Talk 1041. I'm Nick Reed. Michael Cohen yesterday testified. He's going to testify today again. But yesterday was the prosecution that was questioning him. And obviously seemingly he's the only witness they presented that they actually worked with and prepped beforehand, which frankly it doesn't surprise me because that's apparently the basket in which they have put all their eggs. And just based off performance, their other witnesses they brought forth all backfired on them and testified to things that they said, I don't know, like defense witnesses. But Cohen, the media is just really impressed by him. He just kept his cool. Well, it was the prosecutor asking him questions. It was his witness. He was their witness. Yeah. Probably not combat. If that is what they are creating as a standard of success, that finally the prosecution has a witness that didn't turn out to be a total humiliating embarrassment when they were questioning him. Now, today, however, may prove to be much more interesting because this is when the defense is set to take a crack at him. Also, again, yesterday, what he testified to, if we have time in the show, I'll play Jonathan Turley's take on this. And it's once again, he's testifying about things that aren't even relevant to what it is they're accusing him of. For example, making payments to the National Enquirer to make a story go away. That has nothing to do with Stormy Daniel payments. It's just, again, but none of these witnesses have actually provided evidence of what the alleged crime is. And even MSNBC yesterday, their legal analyst was like, well, it's still a little confusing because we don't really exactly know what he's being charged with. And they're on their last witness. It is being reported that Vivek Ramaswamy is going to be at the trial today, as is Speaker Mike Johnson. Now, some wonder if this is Vivek is trying to get that VP slot. Vivek has been active in some capacity or another. If he does not get offered some cabinet position, I don't think vice presidential, but a cabinet position, I would be a bit surprised. I think that will probably occur. The fact that Mike Johnson is showing up, this tells me that he has some real concerns about self-preservation. And he has recognized that he has weakened himself by betraying the voters and the Republican Party by siding with Democrats and assisting them, essentially allowing them by proxy to call the shots in Congress. And this appears to be maybe just a little bit of cozying up and making sure Trump knows I'm here for you, guy. That way, if Trump gets reelected, Johnson may have an ally in Donald Trump. Springfield's Talk 1041. I'm Nick Reed. First Alert Forecast sponsored by St. Clair of the Ozarks Home Improvements from Color 10 Fox 49 meteorologist Tom Schmidt. Going to have some of those scattered showers and thunderstorms, mainly afternoon today. High near 70. All that should wrap up by around 8 o'clock tonight. Afterwards, mostly cloudy, 56 for a low. Partly sunny tomorrow with a high near 78. And Thursday, a 70% chance of showers and thunderstorms. Then mostly cloudy, high near 77. VP Kamala Harris calls to kick the effing door down in speech about breaking barriers. This apparently is her new attempt to reach young people, I guess. I don't know what it is. I mean, I think there is some desperation to, I don't know, be relatable. She's not connecting with people. People don't like her. This is what polling has consistently shown. She is pretty consistently the only high-level elected official that is less popular than Joe Biden, and that's got to sting. That has really got to sting. They were at an event yesterday, and he made a comment about choosing her because he knew that he needed someone smarter than him in the White House, and I thought, man, there's a lot there. What a compliment to her. And boy, is that a low standard. She's thinking to herself, like, oh. Vice President Kamala Harris used profanity during a speech Monday at an annual Asian Pacific American Institute of Congressional Studies Legislation Leadership Summit. Whew. She said, quote, "We have to know that sometimes People will open the door for you and leave it open. Sometimes they won't. And then you need to kick the effing door down, she said. Excuse my language. Oh, how edgy. It's very edgy, this one. I haven't felt this edginess from Kamala Harris since she claimed that her favorite artist in college was it Snoop Dogg or someone who hadn't even released an album yet, if I remember correctly. I mean, isn't it the Asian young person in this country that this administration argued in court is a race that they should be able to discriminate against when it comes to education? This is an administration that argued in court that specifically universities should be able to target Asians for discrimination purposes. The argument that the White House made is that there are too many of those Asians in college. There's just too many of them walking around campuses everywhere you go. See all those Asians. And they argued that universities should be able to weed them out because they're Asian, and there's too many of them. The Supreme Court said you can't really do that. You don't get to pick a race and institutionalize discrimination against them. There's kind of, sort of, a few rules against that in the United States of America. Now, of course, the Democrat-run universities are doing everything they can to figure out a way around that ruling so that they can continue to discriminate against Asian students, something that this White House, Kamala Harris is part of, has been fully supportive of. What a sad thing. You wonder how many people in that audience that are Asian are aware that they were targeted in that way by this administration. And what a sad thing to go and to give an audience to someone who is part of that administration by individuals in the Asian community. We can only hope that the vast majority of those Asian individuals that gave her an audience had no idea about that effort to target them by way of discrimination. Because the only thing sadder is if they do know and they go anyway. For any person to give an audience to someone who uses the power of government to target them and try to discriminate against them, particularly based off of race, is not a very healthy sign. What a classy lady. Speaking of class, Gold Star family's blasting Jen Psaki's lies. Her useless blank wasn't even there. This is just so perfect after the Kristi Noem debacle. Jen Psaki has a book out in which she has made a very provably false claim. And it's a claim, unfortunately, that involves Gold Star families. It's regarding those who unnecessarily lost their lives in Afghanistan with that suicide bomber that someone, whenever there was the ability to take out the suicide bomber, gave the stand down order, allowing the suicide bomber to kill countless numbers of individuals, including 13 American service members. No one, of course, lost their job for that or got reprimanded. It has to do with the famous incident in which, while those 13 American service members killed in Afghanistan were being brought back here, delivered to their families in the United States, and Joe Biden couldn't wait to get out of there fast enough, kept looking at his watch. Well, Jen Psaki writes that did not happen. This is what she writes in her book. That it did not happen. That he did look at his watch, but it was after the whole thing was done and over with. Now, the problem with this, of course, is that it's on tape. It's on video. According to Axios' Alex Thompson, who had the misfortune of reading at least part of Psaki's book, Psaki falsely claimed that it was misinformation for the Gold Star families and their supporters to claim that Biden checked his watch as their loved ones' remains returned to American soil. So she is falsely accusing the family members of the dead service members of being liars, I guess to make Biden look bad. Well, this is a classy move. Psaki falsely claimed the president looked at his watch only after the ceremony had ended. Moments later, he and the First Lady headed towards the car. A parent of one of those killed said her useless blank wasn't even there. We were. Now, this couldn't happen at a better time subsequent to the Kristi Noem fiasco. And what we are going to see is the full and complete hypocrisy of the media. Do you think that this is going to be as big of a deal? Don't misunderstand me. I understand people say, well, yeah, but Kristi Noem, she was considered to be vice presidential material. This is why that was a big deal. And I agree, yeah, that is significant. She earned that attention. And it was clear that the book release and the book tour was part of an audition for the vice presidential slot. I mean, that's what that's for. It's not uncommon. This is the way that this oftentimes is done. You know, if you think you're a potential vice presidential contender, you have a book release around the time that decision's going to be made. So you're out there, you're in the media, you're doing all these news stories. So she put herself in that arena. And she put some things in for a number of different reasons that obviously were not wise to put in there. The dog thing, I think, well, I don't know. In terms of credibility, more damaging was the Kim Jong-un deal, in which she claimed that she stared him down. And then it kind of sounded like she was saying that, well, okay, I didn't, I'm going to remove it. But seemingly she refused to say that it was because she didn't do it, and it just became a whole Elizabeth Warren Native American ancestry thing where Elizabeth Warren just wouldn't answer a question regarding it, and it became very frustrating. Of course, Elizabeth Warren is considered one of the great heroes of the Democrat Party, while Kristi Noem, we're supposed to think that she's some sort of idiot that has absolutely no credibility whatsoever. But that aside, the media, of course, railed on her. Railed, particularly the Kim Jong-un. Credibility. Here you have Jen Psaki, who is one of the faces of MSNBC, who has a show whose job it is to inform. And she is caught doing the exact same thing that the media blasted Kristi Noem over, and that is putting something in her book that was not true. By the way, Psaki, and in the same Kristi Noem approach of, oh, gee whiz, that shouldn't have been in there. We're going to make sure it's taken out of future printings. That's what Jen Psaki is doing as well. It is almost as if the stars aligned to have one of the darlings of the Democrat Party in the media find herself in the exact same position, rather put herself in the exact same position that Kristi Noem put herself in, so that we could all watch the dishonest approach. So we could all see how it is that the outrage isn't about the issue itself, but the person. If Kristi Noem is to be criticized, rightfully so, again, I would argue, about not being a credible person you can trust because she put something in a book that was provably not true, how is it that as MSNBC, you are supposed to be a news outlet? You have front and center one of your top providers of information that has done the exact same thing, and you keep them on the payroll. Unless, of course, you're fully acknowledging that honesty and credibility is irrelevant to your network. And don't say, well, this is different. I mean, this was an incident. This was simply about how many times he looked at a watch. That's not that important. Well, first off, clearly it is by the reaction of the family members of those who were killed in Afghanistan and delivered that day. But this was not about how many times he looked at his watch. This was about whether or not the President of the United States, who is running for re-election, displayed such a lack of compassion while family members are accepting the bodies of their loved ones who lost their lives under his watch. And that was the one thing he couldn't stop looking at, as if, I'm bored as hell. This is a waste of my time. Jen Psaki's telling is that's not what happened. It wasn't a matter of how many times did he demonstrate that behavior towards these parents. Was it 2 or 3? She's claiming that he didn't look at it at all until the ceremony was over. In other words, she's saying it didn't happen. So if they are forced to address this, I'm sure it will once again be with a disinformation campaign, as this is different. It was just a little detail that didn't really make any difference in the overall story, when in fact, of course, that isn't true. But it's MSNBC. This is a network that finds Claire McCaskill worthy of analysis. Wilder RV, visit wilderrv.com. The site is great because it gives you a sense of the massive amount of product line that they provide, but it also has financing options there. It gives you information about having your RVs prepped, any sort of work that you need. But also, I love the pricing component to it. So you can find, I was on there a few days ago, and there was a family RV for family, brand new, and I want to say it was like $160 or $170 a month in payments on financing, which is a lot less than you might think if you've not ever had an RV before, and you might have thought we can't afford it. Well, there's a very good chance. If you can stay in a hotel room one night, you can, in all likelihood, afford a brand new RV for you and your family. Clinton, Missouri, just a little over north, or an hour north on 13. It is a straight drive. It is well worth it. And the pricing you see on their site is the pricing you get. They don't lure you up there with lower prices in order to slap a bunch of stuff on once you get there. Frankly, they don't have time for that. They, because of their reputation, have people from all over the country travel there to Clinton, Missouri, Wilder RV, and you don't have that occur because you bait and switch people. Wilder RV, you can find them at wilderrv.com, and of course, again, Clinton, Missouri. Now, I know, understandably so, and I'm not arguing with it whatsoever, that when it comes to the Chiefs, Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, probably like 2 of the favorites. But it is becoming increasingly difficult, though he doesn't get near the attention, that kicker Harrison Butker is, I mean, he vies, I think, at least off the field, as just like a favorite, just a favorite. He was the speaker at the Benedict College commencement, or Benedictine College. This is in Kansas City on Saturday. And he had a few things to say that are earning him a few news stories. Butker implored the graduates to understand and stop, quote, stop pretending that the Church of Nice is a winning proposal and to never mistake charity for cowardice. The world around us says, this is part of his commencement speech, the world around us says that we should keep our beliefs to ourselves whenever they go against the tyranny of diversity, equity, and inclusion. We fear speaking truth because now, unfortunately, truth is in the minority. Butker also hit at Biden over his poor leadership that had negatively affected their lives, saying, quote, while COVID might have played a large role throughout your formative years, it's not unique. The bad policies and poor leadership have negatively impacted major life issues, things like abortion, IVF, surrogacy, euthanasia, as well as growing support for the degenerate cultural values and media all stem from pervasiveness of disorder. He also referred to Biden's position as somebody who claims to be a Catholic regarding abortion as being delusional. It's always nice to hear people speak the truth in an unapologetic fashion. But when it's somebody that potentially has a lot to lose because of it, I don't know, there's something about it. There's a strength there, there's a dignity there, and that is the sort of role model that we should be looking for. You know, I mean, he's not isolated in this. He's not the only one. But for all the talk about what is a role model, what isn't a role, and some of the things, some of the people and the things that some of these people do that are looked up as role models, there's such better offerings out there, and sometimes they're right before our own eyes. Springfield's Talk 1041. I'm Nick Reed. Yesterday, Jonathan Turley on the revelation that Michael Cohen recorded his client, Donald Trump.
Well, the most important thing about the audio tape is that there was an audio tape. I mean, for most lawyers, listening to this tape, is really an appalling moment. The very idea that an attorney would tape a client without their knowledge or consent just shatters every aspect of professional conduct. But the tape really doesn't offer much. Like much else in Cohen's testimony, he gives these details of how he goes to his client and says, I fixed the problem. I arranged for payments. This is not good. This story is going to go away, at least before the election. And Trump saying things like, good. Well, that sounds a lot like a client following the directions of his lawyer. But now the lawyer is telling the jury, I think you should send my client to prison for doing what I suggested for him to do.
So there's no clear evidence that Trump knew precisely every detail or quote unquote micromanaging, which leads me to my other question. I mean, I read all your columns in the various publications. What was illegal here, Jonathan? I'm still trying to figure it out. As a non-lawyer, what was illegal?
That's why this is such an embarrassment for the New York bar. There's nothing illegal here. What Cohen was describing is not a crime. The prosecutors are making great fanfare over proving non-criminal acts and non-contested allegations. Yeah, there's an NDA. Yeah, money was paid. That happens all the time. And so we're still left with this bizarre situation of a trial over something that none of us have yet been told what the crime is.
Yeah, and as expected, of course. Finally, a big thank you to Joe Biden sign after he demonstrated support for Israel after October 7th has been changed to now read, Dear President, the screams of our babies, women, men, and elderly who were murdered, slaughtered, and burned alive are calling you from the ashes. No more. Please don't. This in reference to his continued support for Hamas, both militarily and through propaganda. This is what has been done to our relationship with one of our greatest allies, Israel. Glenn Beck's next. I'm Nick Reed.